U.S. President Donald Trump is shaking up global trade again, this time with a steep tariff hike on Chinese goods. The new rate now hits 145% after a fresh 125% increase on earlier fentanyl-related duties. While most nations now face a 10% baseline tariff, Trump has paused further hikes for 90 days, a move that has offered brief relief to markets. But the pause doesn't apply to China. Key sectors like steel, autos and semiconductors are under different regimes or remain untouched. Trump says he still wants a deal with China, but his tough stance continues to rattle the markets. Stocks tumbled Thursday after sharp gains the day before. French President.
Well, it's been amazing. We had a big day yesterday. There'll always be transition difficulty, but we had in history, it was the biggest day in history, the markets. What happens with China? We would love to be able to work a deal. They've really taken advantage of our country for a long period of time. They've ripped us off beyond nobody. How people stood for it, sitting in my position, is not even believable. And we're talking about many presidents, not just a couple. But they did, and all we're doing is putting it back in shape. We're resetting the table. And I'm sure that we'll be able to get along very well. I have great respect for President Xi. He's been, in a true sense, he's been a friend of mine for a long period of time. And I think that we'll end up working out something that's very good.
Moving on now, French President Emmanuel Macron called the pause fragile and urged Europe to mobilize all levers. He says the EU must be ready with countermeasures. The European Union responded by suspending its own counter-tariffs for 90 days. Trump praised the EU's move as smart, hoping for progress at the table. But in the UK, talks are tense. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says any US trade deal must serve the UK's national interest. Trump's advisor says only an extraordinary deal will lower tariffs below 10%. Meanwhile, Trump is also threatening sanctions on Mexico over a water-sharing treaty. He accuses Mexico of shortchanging Texas farmers. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum insists they're doing what they can amid a severe drought. Meanwhile, Canada vows to retaliate with tariffs designed to hit back at the US, promising to protect Canadian jobs while inflicting, in Prime Minister Carney's words, maximum pain. Moving on, once again, Asian markets took a heavy hit on Friday as trade war fears rattled investors. Japan's Nikkei plunged 5% in early trade. South Korea's Kospi also dropped nearly 2%, tracking Wall Street's deep losses. The slump follows renewed fallout from US President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs, including a 145% rate on Chinese goods. Meanwhile, US oil prices tumbled over 5%. Gold surged to a record above $3,171 an ounce as the dollar weakened sharply. On Wall Street, stocks resumed their slide. The S&P 500 ended down 3.5%, giving back much of Wednesday's rally after Trump's 90-day tariff pause on most partners, excluding China. Dow dropped 2.5% and the Nasdaq fell over 4%. Trillions in value have now been wiped out in just days. Despite the market chaos, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says he saw nothing unusual. But Trump admitted there's a transition cost, insisting the long-term result will be worth it. We are now joined by
transition cost and transition problems, but in the end, it's going to be a beautiful thing.
We are now joined by Akshita Thomas, Associate Producer for NewsX World, to give us the figures live. Akshita, what can you tell us about those numbers?
It's an extremely wild week for the financial markets as Trump has put in the tariffs. Now he's planning to put up a pause on the 90-day pause on the tariffs, except on China, which will have a 125 percent tariff. So gold has reached an all-time high, and the US dollar has significantly dropped. And if we take a look at the markets, Asian markets had a very tough time in the initial moments of trade. Let's take a look at their afternoon numbers. Nikkei had initially reached 4%, but it's now dropped to 2.91%. If we move over to Hong Kong's Hang Seng, it is now recovering slightly at a 0.94%. Moving on, if we check out Kospi, it is at a 0.49%. It has dropped at a 0.49%. ASAX is at 0.82%. And moving on, if we check Taiwan's index, it is slightly recovering with a 2.78%. India's Nifty is at a 2.12%. It is also slightly recovering. We check out Dow and Jones. If we move on to the US markets, it's dropping at a 2.5%. S&P dropping to a 3.46%. And if we check out NASDAQ, it's at a drop to a 0.43%. So as we can clearly see, the US markets are still affected by Trump's tariffs, and the Asian markets are slightly recovering, although some of them are still heavily impacted by them, but there's a slight respite in the Asian markets as compared to the US markets.
Thank you very much, Akshata. We will continue to bring you more developments as Trump's tariffs take effect. Moving on now, a newly signed agreement